Well, thank you, Greg. I'm going to do a couple little housekeeping chores here. First thing, let's see if I'm all mic'd up. Sound like the mic's on? Okay, now we're getting, yeah, that go away? Okay. All right, first thing I want to talk about this morning is, Jennifer, I want to thank you. I've had the opportunity to be on the Winter Series here in West Virginia for the past 3 or 4 years, and many of you all have seen me speak before. You'll recognize some of these slides. You'll probably recognize some of my animated one-liners as actual repeats. Just go along with me and act like it's the first time you heard it. That'll help me a whole lot. I really want to thank you for the opportunity that I've had to be in your beautiful state. I'm a graduate of Virginia Tech, which is in the western part of Virginia. Just to make sure we're clear. And, you know, the great thing about traveling in West Virginia when you're not from here is that not every holler GPS works in. And surprisingly, the places where GPS doesn't work is also where your cell phone doesn't work. And so what I've learned in West Virginia is if you're going up a mountain, just keep going because it's beautiful on the other side. And I've discovered a lot of great, wonderful places over here and met some wonderful people. And it's always exciting to be back up here. Now, having said that, Bob, stand up. Stand up, let everybody see you. Turn around. Look at Bob Hendershot. Look at that tie. He's killing me this morning. Now, he's your closing speaker. And Gary started out with a tie yesterday, and I was coming up here just trying to be friendly and be from the farm. So I feel like I'm a little underdressed with my co-speakers today, but we're going to stay energized and everything's good. So let's get into this thing. I want to tell you right up front that I thought Gary Lacefield's presentation yesterday morning was excellent. I really applaud him not only for the quality of his presentation, which is also good, but for being bold enough to challenge us with some things that we probably needed to hear, and pulling about 8 slides out of my PowerPoint and doing it, which may help us today. On that point, I'm gonna hit about 4 or 5 really big picture points, and they'll be easy to know because right in the middle of that, I'm gonna say, hey, this is a big picture point, okay? And some of those are gonna stimulate your thinking a little bit, and some of them may make you mad. That's good. That's what these kind of conferences are about, because lunchtime's a great time to have that back and forth, okay? I will suggest to you that it is an absolute honor for me to be seriously on this program, and my topic, interestingly enough, production genetics and marketing. Those of you that have not heard VMAC Baldwin, try and get in that seminar if you possibly can, because he's the marketing guru. I mean, no question about it. I am beige at best compared to the bright light that he is in marketing. I got a little bit of background in genetics, and so we'll talk about that. And knowing that he's also on the program, a lot of what we're going to do today is sort of a genetic piece. Now, we do have a little bit of work to do this morning, okay? I added a bunch of stuff to my presentation to make the hour fill. And those of you that have calibrated a seeding drill before, calibrating a speaking talk is a little bit the same way in that I had it figured out to about 58 seconds per slide, okay? We're now down to 18 seconds per slide. That's all right. The tendency is, like with a poorly calibrated drill, when you're halfway done and realize you got way too much seed left over, is to speed up and double back over the field. That doesn't make for a good presentation. So I will tell you that I am in another seminar at 9:30, and when we get to the end of our time in this presentation, I'm just going to stop. Now, if you're interested in what I'm saying, come in my seminar and you can get the rest of this presentation. If you're not, go hear Mac. He's got a better presentation anyway. But I'll pick it up in there and finish it up, and that'll make it good. Okay. I did notice, incidentally, that the Iowa State fellows are over here having breakfast. If they get done and they want to come in here, you know, 32 years of college interns, I feel like I've raised more young men than I have cows. And I've probably got some things I can say to them. More importantly, while they're in here, the Mountaineers can be having an extra practice. So, you know, that could be good. Let's crank this thing off and see where we land. All right. What do we want to do with the lights? Want them down just a little bit? I don't want to put people to sleep. We okay? All right. So the first thing we got to appreciate in any topic is that we have to get some notion of what's the big picture and what is the picture. What is it that we're really trying to grab at? What are we after? we can start with the very beginning in any story, or we can try and figure out some way to move the process forward. This conversation went something like this. Hello, Mr. Spray Truck Driver. Did you get all that field sprayed? Oh, yes, I went over it twice. There's no chance that any part of it was missed. It's interesting when you send that picture how quickly the conversation changes to what you really need to talk about. So what we're going to try and do today is kind of jump ahead to some key points and think a little bit about what it is that we're really trying to achieve in marketing our genetics, or genetically selecting to hit our target market. Okay? Now, that's Amherst County, Virginia, on the edge of Nelson County. That's my grandfather's house, actually, where my dad lives today. On the other side of that hill right there, straight back 8 miles, is the community of Massey's Mill. Okay? I grew up in the fruit business. We are seventh-generation family farmers, but despite what's been a pretty good run in my life, oddly enough, I'm the first serious animal husbandry person, at least in the cattle end, in our family operation. We had pretty extensive fruit holdings. This was real fruit country 2 generations ago. And we had a little event that happened when I was 8 years old, August 19th, 1969. Does that ring any bells to any of you fellows in here? Y'all had a little bit of it up here, but nothing like what I'm fixing to tell you. Massey's Mill, 8 miles away from there, is the epicenter of the Hurricane Camille disaster. Okay? Now, this is going to sound like I'm starting out with a downer, but trust me, we're going to get there. On the night of August 19th, it's still the record recorded in the world. In 18 hours, 28 inches of rain fell. Now, you guys have had some pretty wet winters some of these past few years I've come up here, but let me tell you, you just cannot imagine. You cannot imagine. 119 of our neighbors died, mainly mudslides. We went to bed that night with 74 acres of apple trees and 24 acres of peach trees, which was a lot of fruit when you didn't have migrant labor in those days. And we got up the next morning and there were 4 trees. Now, let me tell you my first message today. God is good. God is good every day. I hated the fruit business. I was always the one willing to go feed the cows, anything besides pick fruit. Well, we had to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and figure out something to do, and there was some conservation money around, Greg, thank God, to help us reestablish some grass in those days on those pretty barren ground, and a lot of it topsoil even gone. Mainly mudslides is what really happened that night in that event. And so we kind of eked out. My dad ended up opening an insurance agency and kind of struggled through the farm realities there for a few years. And so when I got out of college, I had a resource which started out with 99 polled Hereford cows that calved year-round. First thing I did is sat down and figured out which month they had most of their calves in, which happened to be July, and just started kind of genetically trying to improve those cattle, and you guys heard kind of where we are today. Now, that happens to be where I live, and on Gary's point, it all starts out with quality forages. That happens to be a field of Max Q, Gary, on the southern slope in front of my house. And that slide is, here's this little kid from Lowesville, okay? Came out of that flood experience. This slide was used in Wichita, Kansas in the year 2000 when we were fortunate enough to be named the Beef Improvement Federation Outstanding Commercial Operation for the United States. Now, I got to tell you, I was sitting on the back of a bus in the Flint Hills on a tour in Wichita, and Norm Vinsel came back and sat down beside me. Most of y'all know Norm with Select Sires. And he asked me if I had some more slides. This is pre-PowerPoint. And I said, Norm, on the application, they said to only send in 2 because there were 38 operations in the country that year competing for this thing. And I said, I sent the 2. And he said, well, we need some more because tomorrow at lunch, we want to do a presentation because you've won the award. Now, I was just a kid. I was really that 8-year-old kid from Lowesville in that moment. And I got to tell you, the best thing that happened to me in the next 5 minutes is Norm got up and went back to the front of the bus. Because when I was looking out of the window and getting pretty daggone emotional, I mean, it was a big deal. Here I was in Wichita, Kansas, for gosh sakes. How do you even get to Kansas? I thought you had to take Toto and go up in a balloon to do it. And all these guys have got the boots and the hats and everything, and for some reason, and I still don't fully understand, they picked us. But it really launched our career in terms of being able to sort of have some reputation and sell females to other people. And what we were recognized in that award for back then was that we were relatively unique, and we're just on the bubble of real full utilization of EPDs at that era, of individually mating every single female instead of whole herd thought process with our matings. And that really is the main thing that they talked about, and following that through with finishing the cattle and the females and having multi-generation records so that we could use the right genetic tools, see, I'm coming back to topic, in order to enhance our marketing, and then with feedback from our customers from our marketing, take our next genetic tool in the right direction. So what I'm also very proud of about this particular picture is that slide's 13 years old. I think those heifers look pretty cool. You don't see a lot of animal-based sets, and you pick your species, that don't over time tend to sort of swing the pendulum one way or the other in terms of type. But those heifers are getting it done in a beautiful setting on good grass. So why me on this particular topic on this particular day? A couple little background pieces that I'll just pull out of this slide that you wouldn't know about me is that when I first got out of college, my dad had a deal where he would give each of us $5,000 worth of stock if we graduated from college and paid for it ourselves. Now, you know, in hindsight, I don't know if that was actually a good deal, but I was glad to get the $5,000 worth of stock. My siblings all took stock because they were smart and they knew what stock was. I took my $5,000 and bought 60 Western ewes, livestock, and started out in the sheep business, actually, when I first came home from school. And over time, we grew that. I ended up with about 500 ewes. We were, for a while, Mac, we were the lamb market in North Carolina back in the late 80s, early 90s. We'd send a tractor trailer down there twice a year and gather up those lambs. And you could buy lambs in North Carolina then, feeder lambs for about 38 cents a pound. Corn was about $1.80 a bushel to $2.20, depending on the year. We were on the way to Stanton. We'd finish those lambs and sell them just under 90 cents on the Eastern market, and we made a little money. And that worked out great. And then the wool subsidy went away, and the dogs came in, and the coyotes after that, and we were growing the cow herd. But in that experience, we did a lot of direct lamb sales, primarily working with churches. So from the marketing standpoint, I can speak to that issue. The other issue is, because we do develop a lot of replacement heifers, we have heifers that don't work out, like even though a lot of our heifers we hope to think do. I've learned over the years that if I'm going to do grass finishing, I'd rather do it with a heifer than a steer, and we'll come back to that point later on. But our market for most of that product actually are restaurant sales, and that's a fickle bunch of people and a different set of folks, and we can come back and talk about that a little bit more later. But relative to this topic, those are just a few things that most people don't know about our operation that I thought would be helpful in terms of setup. Now, this actually is a slide that comes out of a seed stock presentation, but it's germane just the same, because what we're really talking about is being that person trying to produce those genetics and at the same time hit a certain market and appease the customers in your market. So think about this when we go to a bull sale. You know, we are those guys that are stuck in the middle. You know, we do a lot of homework ahead of time. We like to think we know what's going on. We're also, though, the guys in the back of the sale, typically, that other guys that haven't done as much homework are coming up to and seeking advice from. So the people that we buy from know that their relationship with us is important and our relationship and feedback back to them is. And that's been good for us because we've been able to be very candid with some of the people that we purchase from. And I think both of our operations have improved because of that. Two-way communication, a big theme of what I want to say today. So depending on the operation, we can be your friend, your foe, your partner, or your competitor. The way that relationship evolves can make you any one of those things. And that's true, and you can think about that no matter what you're marketing. What we have learned is that in order to be successful in business, it takes a little bit of intelligence. Not a lot. It takes a whole lot of opportunity. God is good every day. It takes a genetic work ethic. My grandparents came out of the Depression just like most of our grandparents or parents. We were blessed in being brought up with a clear understanding of what hard work is. The biggest challenge I have as a parent is trying to convey that same work ethic to my children. And really, it's probably the societal challenge that most of us have today. It also really helps to have a patient bank. You know, I'm kind of a go-getter, and I'm always expanding and doing something, and what's tomorrow's next new venture, and so forth. And having a bank that sort of understands that and has all these different layers, that's pretty daggone important if you're going to really grow a sizable business. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to the pure luck of meeting the right people at the right time and navigating that snaky path between the keepers and the coals. Here's my first genetic big point. Big point. You'll make more improvement in a 2-hour session in your livestock, no matter what species or what your objectives are, in culling the bottom than you will ever make in 30 years of naively attempting to pick the top. That's a great piece of business advice. Don't try and roll the ball uphill if the slope is too steep. If you're working with people that aren't working with you, cull them. You both will be happier. Marketing. So what are we doing? What are we going to do with this grass production genetics? What are we really marketing? Are we marketing cattle or lamb or milk or cheese, or are we marketing grass? Are we marketing genetics, which sort of is our niche? Are we marketing looks? I mean, I tell you what, if there's one thing that the grass community can do well is they can make a website. And I mean, if you don't have a Rebecca from Sunnybrook Farm feeling when you click on most of this stuff, you just aren't reading it. Are we marketing quality? And really, what is quality? Is it a one-time excellent experience, or is it consistency? Are we just marketing image? Okay? Let's break some of that down. Let's talk a little bit about the management that goes into those decisions, irrespective of which one of those targets you're attempting to hit. And whether you're consciously hitting that target or not, I challenge you to think through what you really are doing in your operation. Poor management masks good genetics. If you're mismanaging your stock, it doesn't matter what I sell you or what I have bought as an input, it's never going to be expressed genetically. And we really got to think about that in the grass community. There are certain thresholds of nutrition that we have to achieve. And most of that we can do with quality forage management. But the world is tough and the environment changes. And we have to be careful not to be such purists that we back ourselves into a sub-threshold of lack of genetic expression, or we'll never make any progress because we said on a particular day that it's only going to be grass, and okay, now we're in the third year of drought with 2 blizzards, but by gosh, we've only given them grass. We need to think about that. It's a business. It's not a religion. Exceptional management can cover up poor genetics temporarily. There's not a one of us that hasn't been to a sale where we really didn't know the people that well, and the bulls looked just fantastic and were mud fat, and boy, they were just plumb sorry after we got them home. You can definitely make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. There's no question about that. But if you want a long-term customer, that's not going to work. So we get into it, what are our expectations? Do they need to be tempered or do they need to be realized in terms of what's really going on? And that very much depends on the target consumer and the client. You know, there's some big outfits in this country in the genetic business that the top third of their genetics are really high end. But the truth is, the reason they make a whole lot of money is that the reputation of the top third allows them to sell the bottom third for way more than what they're worth. That's actually their business model, whether they'll admit it or not. So if you want a long-term relationship with your clients, you got to begin with the end in mind. If I'm selling a heifer to somebody, the first thing I want to know is their management ability so that I can help steer them to what is going to be a positive outcome. There's a lot of variables associated with grass finishing. And, you know, we'll run through these, but maturity is probably the one that we need to think about the most. Gary spent some time yesterday talking about tenderness, and we're going to pound that here in a few minutes. At the end of the day, you can't change this one once you get to a certain point. And so a lot of the rub in grass finishing is trying to get to that size and do it in a timely manner, which is why the quality of the forage is so relevant. The degree of finish. You know, there's some horrible product out there, folks, that despite what the website says, you know, we have to be honest about. And I think that the real next wave that's going to happen in grass finishing is that we're going to develop a two-tiered pricing system, basically, where there's the good product and the bad product. We just got to figure out how to grade that in a meaningful way. Tenderness. You know, tenderness is probably a much bigger deal in grass finishing than it is in conventional finishing, because at the end of the day, there's really two factors that come together that we call flavor. One is juiciness, which is basically marbling. It has a whole lot to do with whether or not you can cook, but it's basically marbling. And the other is tenderness, which has a little bit to do with whether or not you can cook, but it is absolutely impossible to take a tough piece of meat and cook yourself out of a hole. All flavors. Mac probably can tell you more about all flavors than anybody I know, and I won't steal his thunder on that, but there's a lot of things that can go wrong that we don't think about just because they're out there foraging. Harvest stresses. Now, I want to hit harvest stresses a little harder than you maybe normally think about. You know, we know about dark cutters, and we know about the adrenocorticoids that flush through the system and cause that phenomenon in the big commercial packing plants. At the end of the day, despite the very good job that these small arbiters do, they're really small mom-and-pop operations. And there's a lot of things that can happen even though you've done everything right when you actually get to that plant. You know, the pallet that's tied up with a piece of baler twine that your animal gets their foot stuck in and gets real panicky. The animal that gets out off the dock. You know, there's a lot of things that can go wrong and completely change the taste of that meat after you've done everything else right. So partnerships, including your harvester, are extremely important. Aging of product, getting back to this tenderness thing, definitely much more important with grass finishing than with conventional finishing. And packaging. Let's go back to the mom and pop arbiter again. You know, everybody nowadays has got a vacuum packaging machine and everybody's doing flash freezing and all this other sort of stuff. But it's still technique. You know, are you getting the air out the way you're supposed to? Once you have it frozen, how are you handling it? You know, throw it around a little bit and see how bruised it is when you open that package again. So you have to think, you went through all this trouble to make this product. Don't screw it up at the end. All right, that's really what we're trying to do right there, is take that product right there, which we wouldn't be in this room if it wasn't for the fact that, guess what? God is good every day, because He allowed us to have a factory that man would have never figured out, that can take cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin with a bunch of workers that don't know each other, that regrettably in 2013, Gary, we've only identified 8% of the ruminant microflora. but we don't need to do any more research, right? To convert inside the bigger factory, to convert all of that, something that we can't eat, into a bunch of different products for an evolving population. We could never have figured that out. If we could, we would have cellulosic energy, and ethanol would make sense. But despite as beautiful as that grass is, and what we know God's part is, at the end of the day, we have to take an honest look at our own cattle. I don't know about y'all, but you know, some days when I go out, it's just like there's an aura over top of my cows. Y'all ever feel like that? My cows are so pretty. I mean, y'all don't need to come tell me. I just know. So I probably really don't need to do anything different than what I'm already doing. All y'all got to do is just come on down, bring me the money. It'll be fine. It'll all work out. See how that works out in terms of long-term customer repeatability. Sometimes we have to just kind of see the whole situation, which is the grass and the cow, and make sure that the two are working in sync. Because, you know, we have some challenges, and we have to think through making sure that the customer has the most positive experience that they can have in their individual operation working on grass so that they have a positive experience. And I can tell you, those little fellas right there, the customers are a lot happier with when they're standing up. It's very important that they be breathing. And at the end of the day, I don't care if you have the worst depression problem on the face of this earth. If newborn babies don't turn your crank and get you fired back up for yet another season. Greg asked us what day today is. You know what today really is? Today is the first warm Saturday in March. What day is that? That's the day that you're kicking yourself again because you didn't plant clover back in February. That's what today is. Marketing. These are heifers that we will sell in April. Okay? These actually are some of my sale heifers that are coming up in my sale. I would be remiss in my responsibility to my family if I didn't take this opportunity in front of all of you all to show you some of my heifers. Okay? This just happens to be part of my presentation. My cell phone number is 434-944-2292, and that's the Tuesday after the Virginia Beef Expo at our farm. Okay. We make them in lots of different flavors and lots of different colors to meet lots of different needs. We have targeted bloodlines that are specific for our customers, and they're not all the same. But we think we make pretty attractive product. There's a lot of things we have to think through to get that job done. So let's jump into some of this genetic stuff, all right? Let's get into the heart of what we're talking about today. First thing we got to do, let's get over some of the terminology. A lot of people say, man, all that genetic stuff, all those numbers, and it's such statistics, it's just driving me crazy. Well, you know what? There's some pretty simple stuff in here, really. We just have put big fancy words on it and made it overly complicated. Branding. Okay, you know, it really doesn't matter what you're selling. Branding is reputation. That's all it is. Take out the word branding, put in the word reputation. Everybody in here has got a reputation. And there's two reputations. There's the one you think you have, and there's the one you really have. That's branding. Okay? Heritability. Heritability always scares people. Now, I won't even give you the actual definition because I think it's going to slow us down too much. But heritability is nothing in the world except probability. It's likelihood. It's expectation. It's an informed decision that's going to lead you in a particular direction for a particular trait. Don't be afraid of it. We're going to spend some time on that in a minute. Accuracy. Accuracy is the relative risk. Okay? It's knowing whether there's 4 cards left in the deck and you're a good card counter, or 50 cards left in the deck and you can't even remember the first 2. It's just your relative risk in making your hopefully informed decision using your heritability. But it's an important piece of the puzzle because what you really want is repeatability. And repeatability is nothing but just consistency, and I can assure you that's the most important thing with your clients. Environmental influence, and we talk about blizzards and droughts and bad forages and good forages and all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, that's where you come in, because that's management. And we talk about separating genetics from environment. I'll spend a lot of time in my next seminar talking about that. But at the end of the day, it's management. This is where you have to come in. And God is good every day because He gave us a higher level of thinking. We just got to not be so stupid that we forget that and shoot our own selves in the foot. So this branding thing, let's take a few of these and break them down. If it's reputation, you know, if you build it, they will come. And I think, I say maybe in this slide, but the reality is everybody will come once. Doesn't matter what it is. There's not a person in here that hasn't tried calamari. I mean, calamari, are you kidding me? If they'd have told you fried octopus, would you have put it in your mouth? Squid? Come on. But calamari, oh. Sounds like you ought to be on a boat in Venice, you know, and somebody's, didn't that just, oh, it's beautiful, calamari. Now, whether or not you come back to it, who knows? Well, they're only going to come back if they have a positive experience. If it's cold, if the breading's bad, if they didn't fry it right, it isn't the squid's fault, but you're probably not going to ever eat it again. If you have an exceptionally high product, and if you have really good quality control, and you got great employees, and I've been blessed to have a lot of great boys over the years, at the end of the day, if they don't maintain those standards, you may have the biggest customer base in the world and you can lose it just like that. So the quality control really starts with consistency, not just protocols, but making sure as you're pushing that genetic window that you don't get out ahead of yourself. So do you actually have a plan for the unforeseen? Do you have a backup plan in your marketing if something goes wrong? Have you thought through that part of those important conversations? Because here's an example that I think is great. Certified Angus beef arguably is probably the biggest success story in the meat industry. Who would have ever thought that they would have done what they've done with that product? And it is absolutely recognized in the restaurant trade as the premier product today. Absolute success. But you wouldn't believe the things that can still go wrong that they have to deal with. The billboard guy left out the G. How does that possibly happen? Somebody's got to fix that. I mean, can you imagine the lawsuits? So you always got to be ready for the unforeseen. Now, we want to try and go about this genetic journey as much as possible using the tools that we can get the most accuracy to accomplish our goals. And let's not get scared of these charts. I'm just going to show you that it really doesn't matter what the species is, that we've got good numbers on heritabilities, which is what? Probability, that help us work on specific traits. What's interesting and what you'll see in these slides, it doesn't matter whether you're producing meat or milk. The highest heritabilities are basically for our end product. Carcass traits in beef and lamb, milk quality traits in the entire spectrum of the species tend to be the highest heritabilities. God is good every day. That's true with dairy. All you got to do is, there, somewhere there's a little, you see that light? Yep. Okay. Look how high these heritabilities are. Fat content, protein content, lactose, which is milk sugar, milk yield. Those are really high heritabilities. Look at some of the other stuff. Not high at all. Okay? So we can genetically engineer a specific product for a specific audience. There's a lot of cool things that we can do within the cattle sector. Okay? And we're not going to get hung up on specificity right now on any of that. So, knowing that we can do all that, next big point. In the grass finishing business, despite the marketing niche that some people have attempted to achieve, do we actually need new breeds? If we have all this data behind these cattle and all these records, can we not figure out a way to select within the breeds that we already have for our target marketplace, just as we have selected for lots of other target marketplaces. Because there's variation in management and environments, but the raw data, whether you're talking about a conventional feedlot or a grass finishing feedlot, is still the same. It's still the same. Oh, wow, okay. I just got the 10-minute sign, so I'm guilty myself of chasing my own tail up here a little bit. How many records are we talking about? I tell you what, in the Angus Association, this is what they're chunking out every week right now. On Tuesday, they update the EPDs real time. You're never going to make enough observations on your farm to tilt at a windmill compared to what you can get out of this database. The Holsteins are the same way. There's a great new venture going on right now with Simmental, Gelfie, Maine Anjou, Limousin, and Red Angus in a multi-breed database. They're adjusting all those EPDs across breeds and pulling all that data together into one base. They're also using, because of the Sim-Angus balance or versions of those cattle, the Angus database to validate the data. Guess how many records? They have 22 million records in every run of their data. That's accuracy. So we know that the heritability of these carcass traits is very high. Basically around 40. Okay? One that we talked about a little bit yesterday, Gary, and I want to come back to, and I went back and stuck this in last night. Tenderness is a little bit of a different animal in that the heritability is a little more variable between breed, and we know that there's some differences between Bos indicus and Bos tars. Okay? The Brahma type cattle and the English type cattle. But the average, if you notice, is still right in that 40% range. Now, the actual gene that we're all chasing expressing tenderness, which is the calpastatin gene, actually has very high heritability, between 40 and 70%, depending on the breed. So, you know, DNA testing will get us there a lot faster than traditional testing on this particular trait. But, big point. There's a minimum nutrition threshold level that the shear tests work to express variation in. This is also true about marbling. If you have not achieved a minimum nutrition level in the animal's development, you will not have variation in your sample, and you won't be able to make genetic progress. It doesn't matter whether you're in a feed lot, a background lot with weaned calves, or a grass finishing operation. If you starve your animals, you will not get variation in your sampling, and you won't be able to figure out what to do genetically. Also, you'll have two antagonisms that will hurt you. The first one is, with less internal fat, you will drive tenderness the wrong way, okay? But, because the animal's growing slower, much slower in poor management, you get into a maturity problem. And then you fall off the wagon. Tenderness just goes out the window. So tenderness, in my estimation, is one of the first quality mechanisms that we need to infuse into the marketplace and describe in a meaningful way so that folks can price it accordingly. We got work to do in this industry. Maturity influences results actually in three different ways. Puberty, if you're grass finishing heifers as we do, is a blessing. Because when the heifer goes from that teenage heifer and just starts drifting over into maturity, there's a little window, and this is the beautiful eye of the feeder part of this thing that isn't quite as scientific but happens, and we know it happens. When she starts laying down fat, because her metabolic rate changes, you can catch up and cover up a lot of sins. And we're going to find that right between 18 and about 22 months, okay? On the other hand, when you get out past 24 months, when you get out especially around 30 months, it just goes all to pieces because of the tenderness issue associated with aging. And you get B maturity, which is hard bone. You get a product that's just very, very difficult to work with in the traditional marketplace. So somewhere in this 20 to 24 month range, your cattle are going to be optimum or they're going to have tipped over. And you have to figure out with the breeds you're working with in your own population, where that time frame is. But that's where you'll get the biggest animals with the highest quality. In some breeds that might be 18 months, in other breeds it might be 22, but the window that you got to watch is 20 to 24 months. Right in there, everything's going to start changing. Up to a point it changes to the positive, and then all of a sudden it changes to the negative real quick, okay? Now, growth of maternal traits, you'll see not quite as heritable as the carcass traits. You'll notice in this slide that if you can measure it, it's pretty heritable, okay? Remember, heritability is probability. It's likelihood. I would argue that a confusion in the thought process in the average person is that such and such is not heritable at all. I completely disagree with that. Such and such has not scientifically been figured out how to properly extract the environmental influence from the genetic influence. And we lump it all together and we call it something like fertility and say it's lowly heritable. Fertility has, by most estimations, somewhere around 60 different variables associated with it. If we broke that down into 60 different traits, we would find some of those traits are highly heritable, but easily influenced by our good or poor management. So we're lucky in that in creating product to sell in the marketplace, we're in good shape. Here's the point I just made on reproductive traits. How are we on time? 5? Okay. I'm going to start down into where the numbers come from. We're going to run out of time today, folks, so let's just kind of jump in some stuff here real quick. And as I say, I'll pick this up again in my other seminar. All right. Some of you all have seen these next 3 slides before, so I'll jump through them pretty fast. First of all, we know this is a lie because there never was a bull calf at Virginia Tech that weighed 750 pounds, but we'll start out with that. Here, I want y'all to be comfortable with how we use heritabilities, how we build an EPD, and why we ought to have confidence in the numbers. So we'll go quick here, but if he weighed 750 pounds and his contemporaries weighed 650 pounds, and the heritability of weaning weight is 20%, okay, here's how we build an EPD. You got to start out with an EBV. I think one of the reasons I've been lucky enough to be successful in my career, and there's a lot of guys in my age range, there's a little window in there between about 48 and 53. There's a lot of people out there in the industry like Mark Gardner, Donald Brown, Paul Bennett, Ronnie Green, Don Trimmer, Ned Sayer, a lot of people that are really up there in sort of the genetic circles. We all came through school at exactly the same time, and we were just lucky. God is good every day. What happened is, when we were freshmen, we had EBVs. When we were the tail end of our first part of our junior year, all of a sudden we had EPDs. So when we graduated, and let's face it, nobody's ever smarter than the day they graduate from college, and it's just a downhill slide from that. All we knew was that system. So we weren't pushing back, what is this new system? I already know everything there is to know about breeding cattle. And that's been a real piece of luck in my career, in that that's all we knew, and it ended up becoming the system that we breed cattle with today. So all you have to do with an EBV is you take the difference between the animal you're evaluating and the average of the contemporary group. You subtract that difference, multiply it times the heritability. So the estimated breeding value, the genetic oomph, if you will, of this particular bull is 20 pounds. All right? Now, this is going to get real scary. This is a real high concept here. What do we do with an EPD? All right? And why don't we just use the EBV? Well, guess what? Cloning doesn't happen everywhere yet. In order to do a mating, you have to have a female and a male. They don't necessarily have to be in the same place at the same time anymore, but you have to have one of each. Okay? Because of that, only half of the EBV, the estimated breeding value, is passed on from either parent. So the EPD is the estimated progeny difference. It is the bull, or female for that matter's, ability to pass on X amount of trait in a particular mating. That's all it is. See how simple that is? We shouldn't get scared of that. So in this case, the EPD for weaning for this particular bull would be 10 pounds better than the average of his contemporary group, and we would expect if we went to a bull sale, NKs were worth 90 cents, and that hadn't been that long ago, that he'd be worth $1,080 more on the day of the sale. You can plug in your own numbers in real-time economics, but you can actually figure out exactly what he will return to you in breeding value for that particular trait. The challenge is that time is not on our side, especially this morning. It takes 5 years to turn a beef cattle generation. I've been in business for 32 years. That means I've turned 6 generations. Most people buy from us not because we're any smarter than anybody else. They buy from us because they want to catch up. They want to take advantage of those 6 generations I've already turned. If you make a mistake, it takes a while to fix it. So you got to be pretty careful and pretty thoughtful in what you're doing. On the other hand, consumer wins can just change like that. So you got to think a little bit, are you direct marketing to an end consumer, or is your program as ours is, where you're marketing to sort of midstream clients that they themselves in turn then might be direct marketing to consumers? Because the sky's always falling in. And folks always want to come and encourage you to take off in this direction or that direction or the other direction, and that's not positive to your long-term goals or to theirs. So some hand-holding, some understanding, some keep peace in the valley is an important part of all this. There's lots of different tools that we can use to get there from here. I'm going to get just through this crossbreeding piece, and then we're going to probably stop for this session so we stay on time. We got 2 minutes, JB? Yes, sir. Okay, good deal. Crossbreeding is the free lunch. It's the easiest thing we got going on. Now, there is a particular breed out there right now that's trying to encourage us not to do that. I think they're wrong. We should never be afraid of crossbreeding, okay? The heterosis effect that I'm going to show you here in a minute, hybrid vigor is beautiful. It's a wonderful thing. It solves all the things that we can't do with traditional genetics just because of the boost. When you start talking about cow longevity, all the fertility traits, it is the fix. But there are people that are afraid of crossbreeding. There are people that are concerned because they had a bad experience because they mismatched one particular breed with another or whatever. That's really what we do best, and I encourage you not to be afraid of it, but make sure you understand what crossbreeding really is as far as how it brings to the party. This is not crossbreeding. Okay? Now, I know that some of those folks that just want to sell you one breed want you to think this. That's not what this is, all right? So let's take really one breed in the rest of the world except the United States, but a breed that has for 65 years now been separate. So there are 2 separate gene pools at this point, and look at them as 2 separate breeds, and they would say they are. These are the crossbreed adjustment factors. In this particular example, you can see what they are, Angus being static for illustration purposes. And so Red Angus is 2.9 pounds more birth weight, 5.4 pounds less weaning weight, 3 pounds less milk, 4.4 pounds less yearling weight, with the same number if you were comparing numbers to numbers. So all you have to do to adjust that is if you want to compare one bull to the next in terms of his genetic input, just take the base number that you have with Angus, in this example it's plus 40, plug in the adjustment factor, which in this case is 5, and all of a sudden you realize that your plus 45 Red Angus bull is genetically equivalent to your Black Angus bull. Okay? But if you got that down pat and you jump to another breed, there's 2 things that you can benefit from. The first is that our plus 50 weaning weight Angus bull is in the top 25% of his population, which means he's expensive. Our plus 25 Simmental bull with adjustment, which is practically the same genetic merit for that particular trait, is in the top 80% of his breed, which means he's cheap. Okay? But when you make them, because of hybrid vigor, by crossing the 2 breeds, you get an additional 4% free. That's the free lunch. That's heterosis. That's hybrid vigor. There's not enough margin in this business to leave the additional 4% on the table. So our goal, and what I will talk about in the other session, is how to combine breeds in a meaningful way that we maintain product consistency and quality, taking advantage of the hybrid vigor boost, which may in some years be our profit margin, and yet not send our product in several different directions at the same time. Because sometimes it's not that we don't see the forest for the trees, sometimes we don't even see the tree. And I think that's probably a good place to stop. I regret we didn't have all our time today, but y'all join me if you can. Don't miss Mac's deal. Okay.
to the talk about the presentation of farm grid of Virginia, so trying to get back here now.